Peace and blessings to you, melanated people, God's people. Man, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and we're out here loving, living, and enjoying life. I had a couple of things that I needed to do, but I wanted to make this video right quick for you. It's a message I received during meditation this morning. And the message was, melanated, your whole perspective of the world has been given to you by television, radio, movies, media, the news. And you have to spend time in meditation to understand what the Creator really meant for you. And I give you a classic example. One thing they used as an example this morning when we were talking, they said that what I saw on a signage when I went to the mounds, you remember I went to the mounds of the Mississippian Indians, Mississippi indigenous people. And on the sign it said that this is where the ruling class lived, that this is where the chief lived. It was a part of the ruling class. And they said, make no mistake, there was no ruling class within the realms of what you've seen on television and in movies. They said, there is just what is. And they said what they meant by that, this is what just what is that there was religious class, there was a chief, there was a healing class, and there was, and not classes, they didn't use the word class, but there were healers, there were spiritualists, there were people who were set aside to, I'm trying to make sure I explain it exactly as they gave it to me. There were people set aside to do certain things. That what the European mind calls the ruling class were set aside to deal with spiritual issues, to spend time in meditation. They needed to spend a lot of time in meditation, a lot of time connecting with the spirit world, a lot of time in making medicines and learning medicines and training themselves. And so they didn't have time to do the ordinary chores, the everyday chores. So there were people who did theirs, but nobody was better than anybody else. It was not like the European kings who made the people work for them and so that they could have riches and wealth, and the people were starving and had nothing. The hunter was not better than the medicine man. There was not the concept of being better. There was just the concept of, this is what my family has always provided for the tribe. This is what my family has always done for the tribe. It was no different. Well, it was a little different, but it was kind of similar to the Levites in the Bible. They spent time in the temple working, communicating with their God and doing what they had to do. And others who owned land, who owned things and did things, they provided for them. But we buy into that European nonsense because we've seen it on television so many times, in westerns, in this, in that, in books that we've read. So our whole perspective of what is has been tainted. And we have to realize that And we have to search through meditation for what is real in the world. There's so many things, you know, and I left out a big part of the indoctrination. The school. We learn all that falsehood about Columbus. And come to find out, really none of it's true. I'll say a big majority of it is not true. But we seen it in movies. We saw it in the history books. So it must be true, right? No, melanated, the ancestor said it is not. You need to go deep into meditation and communicate and access your Akashic records, so that you know what is. Because what is the only way you can climb out of the matrix and have some semblance of freedom. And that's what they don't want you to have. They don't want you to have freedom. So they must indoctrinate you to these things that they are so. I did a video on this some time ago, and I'll put the link on this one, about how Westerns and television and that whole area of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and early 70s was used to was used to perpetuate education and medicine. Basically, you know, there were a lot of other things they dabbled in, but it was basically because you see a lot of people, even the European types in the mountains and hills of Tennessee and Alabama and all these places, they didn't believe in modern medicine. They didn't believe in being cut with a knife and surgery. They didn't believe in taking a pill. They believed in the herbs because that's what we had taught them, and they knew that it worked. But Rockefeller had to get the people to taking these pills so that he could take his petroleum waste and byproduct and use, and not just throw it away, but be able to make money off of it. A whole lot of money off of it. So we have to really realize that television and stuff have jaded our perspective. You watch if you haven't seen a show called The Real McCoys, watch it. And if you're starting to wake up or you're woke, you can see that grandpa character on there is set aside to do nothing but to look silly and make the old heel ways seem foolish. He didn't want to go to a doctor. Like I said, a lot of those people didn't go to doctors. He wasn't educated. They made fun of that. He couldn't read, couldn't write. Because they wanted you to put your kids in school, not for the betterment of you, of the society or your kids, but so that they could have access to their minds and train their minds. You know, and I'm making this kind of long, but I'm just getting all this stuff that I've got to tell you that's coming through, stuff that I didn't prepare, wasn't in my note, but I've got to, it's channeling, so I got to get it through to you. So please be patient with me and stick around to the end. Dr. King realized that, you know, he realized that. You know, Harry Belafonte said they were at a meeting, and Dr. King, after everything was over, Dr. King was sitting off to himself, and he was just looking real distressed, and he and his wife asked him what, you know, Harry Belafonte and his wife said, what's going on, Martin? He said, I fear I've led my people into a burning building. And what he meant by that, he was realizing, was that with integration, we were going to have to go to school with them, and our ways were going to be changed. We were going to have to, our businesses were at risk. Because if we could go and shop at Sears and Roebuck just like everybody else and go through the front door and not be bothered and stuff with integration, then, you know, the small black-owned family business, furniture store or appliance store or whatever, wasn't going to have anybody to support it because no whites were going to go there. And he kind of realized these things toward the end. And that's when he started talking about, you know, things. I want to use the term reparation, but he wasn't saying reparation. But he was, you know, talking about land and things like that and stuff. And that's what got him killed, was that he had changed his story. They were fine with him. See, he was feeding into the Rockefellers' plans. But when he started talking about land and money and things like that, he wasn't in the Rockefellers' plan anymore. Because whether you realize it or not, they wanted integration. They wanted, now the people in the South and the racists, you know, in places like Boston and places like that, who were staunchly, this was a part of their core being, they wasn't for it. But the rich 1%, they were. They wanted that because it meant more money. If blacks got better jobs, that meant more taxation. That meant that their companies could charge more to the government for the things that they were buying. It was a cycle that they were working on, that they were trying to complete. These are the things that they needed to do. They wanted women's lib movement backed by the rich 1%. They wanted those women to have rights and to get out there and get to working, so increase the tax base. That's it, my melanated people. It was just cut off. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. But please just remember that our reality, the things that we think we know, we either learn them in school or we learn them off some form of media. Or we learned them sitting in a church pew. Not good places to get information. Not at all. Be best, my melanated people. Touch feet to soil. Take in a little sun, take in plenty of sunlight, a little moonlight if you can. But most of all, melanated people, love your melanated self. Be blessed.